If you're a pharmacy owner tired of PBMs and insurers eating into your profits, or frustrated by unpaid Medicare advice benefits, explore Waypoint RX's health and wealth care revolution. Their Pharmacy of Tomorrow model includes owning a Medicare insurance agency right in your pharmacy, owning a direct primary care clinic right in your own pharmacy, and offering a pharmacy 401k benefits program for retention, and joining the Prosper RX community for wisdom sharing. Waypoint RX is dedicated to boosting the success of independent pharmacies, believing that thriving local pharmacies vitalize communities. Discover how to leverage your influence and transform your pharmacy's future at waypointrx.com. Join today and build your pharmacy of tomorrow. I'm Mike Kelzer. Growing up in my family's pharmacy, life moved fast. There was always something to do, someone to help. But the moments that meant the most to me as I think back were the conversations my dad and I would have about business and life itself. We'd get so absorbed. We'd talk for an hour and it would seem like 15 minutes. This podcast is my way of keeping those memories alive. There's no scripts, no outlines, no fluff, no hidden agendas. It's just real honest talk about the business of pharmacy and sometimes a little more. Let's dive in. Lou, introduce yourself to our listeners.
I am Lou Bender. I am the founder, president, and CEO of Intensity Therapeutics. I am a chemical engineer by training. I did my graduate and undergraduate at MIT, and I went and lived in Switzerland for a number of years and developed some very interesting biomedical products. Came back, went and got a master's of business at the Wharton School at Pennsylvania, and because tuition was so inexpensive there at the time, I decided to go for a master's in international studies at the same time. Why not?
Of course.
And so then I worked in the drug delivery business, not driving the trucks, but developing the technology to create the way molecules can move through the body. And then I had this idea about 13 years ago almost, of a new way to treat cancer. And I decided to start a business, develop a new drug approach. And here we are, 12 years later, phase 3 product.
Lou, one of my sons is studying chemical engineering, and I've talked on the show before about this, but just like a pharmacist, I don't know a damn thing about chemistry. I'm not sure how much he's going to know either. His is a lot of flow rates and dials and all this kind of stuff. If you had to end up where you were, or if you wanted to end up where you were now and wanted to take the best degree to get you there, would it have been chemical engineering, or would you have taken a different course of studies to, I'm not trying to rewrite history. I know we can say we are where we are and I'm thankful for my path, but would you have taken something different to prepare you more for what you're doing now?
It's a very complex question, even though it sounds very simple. I don't think I could have done what I do or did what I did without chemical engineering as my major. So chemical engineering is not just dials and flow meters and flow rates. That's sort of like the mechanics of what ultimately you build. But chemical engineering is the physics of chemistry.
Yes.
And the math behind it. So, for example, while a chemist may come up with a new way to make a molecule with these complicated reactions, the chemical engineer makes it practical. We study things like how diffusion happens and why it happens and how the thermodynamics of things, where is it going energetically? Where is it going physically? Biologists study pathways and they don't really pay attention to the practicality of how do you get a drug to some part of the body effectively. That's what an engineer does. That's what a physicist will do. So chemical engineering gave me a perspective on drug development and on drug discovery that a biologist or just an MD, because remember, you can go to medical school. You don't have to be studying the sciences. One of my good friends is a great nephrologist, obviously helps a lot of people with kidney disease, but he was an English major as an undergraduate. Now, he had to take all the biology and everything to get into med school. But it's the It's the chemical engineering, the physics of how things work chemically. Why does this molecule react with this molecule like that? The physics, the math behind the kinetics of how they react and how long it takes. That's the discipline that I liked. First of all, I loved it. It's math and chemistry without having to do either of them. You can apply, it's applied mathematics and applied physics in a chemistry setting, which I really liked. So I would have absolutely studied that again because it's helped me understand everything about the way the world works. It's the physics of biology or the physics of chemistry. And that's the understanding you get with a chemical engineering degree.
If you told somebody that water was H2O, they might get that, but that really has nothing to say, as far as I know. It doesn't really have anything to say about the properties of water, like how it's moving and then it feels wet and then it looks like a liquid and all that kind of stuff. It kind of got me thinking about that, like the chemical equations here, but what that does is sometimes like a whole different story, it seems.
Let's talk about water a little bit. So water, let's take a bowl of water. What's happening right at the interface of the air and the water, the liquid water? What's happening there? Well, there are molecules going up and there's molecules coming down. If it's hot, there's more molecules going up. And if it's cold, there's less molecules going up. Then it freezes and there's no molecules going up. That's the physics of the water that we learn. Why does water spread on a metal or a wood differently than it spreads on Teflon? Well, it's a surface tension, a drop. Why does it form a sphere when it's in the air? That's the physics of the surface tension between the water and why it's a sphere. Why is it a sphere? Because the ratio of surface area to volume is minimized in a droplet. You have the physics of just looking at water in a glass. It explains everything. You can understand vapor pressure. You can understand boiling rates. Boiling some water at the top of Mount Everest is going to be different in terms of what the energy needs are than if you're boiling it in Death Valley. The understanding of just boiling water, where it is and what the pressure and what's going on at the vapor pressure, that's what we study in chemical engineering. Now you think about all the compounds in the world and all the things that are happening. You're studying the physics of what's happening with these molecules that are in our daily lives, the particles we breathe, viral particles. These are fundamental physics of what's happening and how we get infected with disease. When COVID hit, you understand why they want to wear a mask. What are masks doing? What are they not doing? What are they can do? I'm not going to comment on what's right or wrong here, but ultimately, try to keep it apolitical. But ultimately, the physics of what's happening with chemicals is what chemical engineering is doing. And that's gives you a perspective. Everything I do, everything I look at, I see through the perspective of the math and the physics of the chemicals that are around us on a constant basis. And that's very, very helpful to understanding and sorting out. If you learn it really well, if you really understand the complex interactions that are occurring, you see the world sort of like in the Matrix, where all of a sudden he saw the green numbers. Everywhere I look, I see the green numbers of where the molecules are going. It's kind of a discipline that I feel has helped me to become the red pill or the green pill, the red pill or the blue pill. I feel that I can see the world through the eyes of the physics and nature of chemistry. So I see nature through that mathematical physics nature. To go back to your question, I see cancer in a way that's different than a biologist or a medical doctor. They see the symptoms, they see this, they see that. But I saw it for what it is and decided to do something about it from my perspective, which was to understand how drug delivery can make potentially a better product to help people with cancer.
So Lou, in my case, being the Business of Pharmacy podcast, I'm not allowed to talk about medicine because I would botch it. I'm probably the only pharmacist that goes out to my little old lady customers and have them explain something to me. So the actual molecule, that's something that you didn't touch a whole lot, but you're touching more the delivery of it to the body. Is that close?
Yeah. I mean, really, whenever you talk about any medicine, the medicine has to get to where it needs to be in the body at the right amount, the right time, and the right dose. And that's all kind of a physical thing. Mm-hmm. then what you're really trying to do is you're trying to find a better treatment for the disease by delivering the best molecules possible to the right place at the right time in the right way. You want to minimize side effects. You want to maximize effectiveness. And that's all physics and natural physics of the chemistry of the medicines that we're trying to create. So it's very important if you're going to give something by mouth, or if you're going to give something intravenously, or if you're going to give something intramuscularly, these all affect the way that drug, the same molecule, will behave. And so you have a lot of different things. It's not just the medicine, the molecule, it's the way we deliver it that's important. I mean, a pill, an IV, an intramuscular, a intratumoral, which is what we do. These are all additive properties of how your treatment goes. And that's what we're trying to do, is to try to minimize, keep the drugs in the tumor. I don't want to get into the medicine of it, but ultimately what you study at chemical engineering is a new perspective on how to create a better pharmaceutical product in any sense.
Again, without getting into too much detail, your drug that you're working with, is that like a patent from another company, and then you've taken that and have directed it with all the stuff we're talking about? Is that fair?
So I'm your classic entrepreneur. I started doing chemistry in my basement, and I'm the inventor of our way of delivering the drug into the tumors.
But you're not the inventor of the compound. Did you get that from another company, would you say?
So there's 3 components in our drug. All 3 of them are old, generic, off-patent molecules. I combine them into this liquid formulation that I created, and all cancer drugs are given one of 3 different ways: an injection into the muscles, an injection into the vein, or a pill in the mouth. And we're creating a new way with this new concoction that I created of injecting it right into the tumors wherever they happen to be. You don't have to hit every one of them, just hit enough to kill the cancer and stimulate from your own tumors your own personal anti-cancer vaccine. So we are killing the tumor. We are converting it into something that is, as it dies, can be recognized by the immune system. And this is all physics and all the way we do it. And it is now something that the immune system can hone in on, like bees to honey. They hone in and they now can adapt and recognize the cancer as not something that should be in the body as we kill it. And they go off and they hunt down the cancer we don't inject. So again, this is all a physical process of directly injecting into the tumor with this delivery technology of 3 molecules that are very well known and very well established. Obviously, nobody had ever put these together, and I had to understand what the magic molecule that we created to deliver the other 2 drugs. Ultimately, this is something that's never been done, and I looked at the problem of cancer from the point of view of a chemical engineer. When you have cancer, you have tumors you can see and tumors you can't see, little pockets of cancer cells that you don't even know you have. And to make somebody live longer and feel good, how do you destroy the tumors that are visible? And how do you get to the tumors you can inject or you can't even see? That was the problem I thought I have to solve. And the way to do that is to kill the bulky tumors as much as you can with this new drug and get the tumor to die in a way that allows for the immune cells to come in and recognize that cancer and then go out and hunt down the cancer we don't inject. And so people don't have these off-target toxicities. The drug's in the tumor and it doesn't go all over the body, and then it sends out signals, antigens, chemicals that can be recognized by certain types of immune cells to go down and train other immune cells to hunt down the cancer.
Now, Lou, with your MBA and things like that, are you as passionate about I know you're passionate about your business. Are you as passionate about business in general? Like, if this was done before, somebody maybe didn't do it right, we're going to get FDA clearance and then we're going to do this in a different way. Do you have that kind of passion for the business part of it, or is that kind of the boring part?
The science is easy. The business is really hard. So financing is really hard. Making investors understand what we have on a new way and getting them over the hump is really hard. The business is the hard part. Okay. I had the idea. The idea looks like I help a lot of people so far. We understand the drug now. We're in phase 3. We're in phase 2. The drug's going. It's the business that's really hard. Let me tell you, when I started this, I had this idea. So I go to my wife and I say, I have an idea for the treatment of cancer. And I'd like to quit my job. I was a CEO of a company and I wanted to leave. It was a genetics testing business, genetic testing company. And boy, you want to know real hard? The business of diagnostics is even way harder than the business of drug development and making money in drugs. That's another podcast. And we could go on for another 90 minutes just on how difficult the diagnostic business is for reimbursement purposes and the value they create and all this other stuff. It's very convoluted. So I had to get out. It was too hard. The business was too hard. Finding a business for cancer is much easier than the business of diagnostics in my mind. At least it was for me. So look, the story was, I go to my wife, I said, I have this idea for cancer. And she says, well, you've never worked in cancer. I said, I know, I have my perspective of chemical engineering. And she says, well, have you ever done research? Well, no, I'm an engineer. I don't do the basic research. I build things. And she said, but they're spending tens of billions of dollars a year on trying to find better treatments for cancer. Do you think they're doing it wrong? I said, they're not doing it wrong, but they're doing it in a way that's not what I think should be done. I think I have a better method. I think I have a new way to do it. She said, but you've never done research and don't know anything about cancer, but you think you, the genius, have a greater idea. You have an MBA. Oh yeah, big guy, MBA. But do you know anything about cancer? Have you done anything with cancer? Can you really say what you need to do to help people with cancer? So she kind of says, I said, all right, well, maybe I'll go talk to my board and see what they say. And they basically said, well, if you have an idea for a business, didn't tell them exactly what it was. If you have an idea for a business, then go do it. In fact, we want you to do it. In fact, we'll give you your buyout and you go do it. So I said, well, guess what, honey? They agree I should do it, but I think I have to leave in order to do it. So I said, I still think I have an idea and this is what we're going to do. And by the way, we're going to put our kids' college money into it because I'm not going to ask anybody for money before I have some data to show that this works. And I took some of my kids' money. I left my job. I got my contract bought out and I never looked back.
Well, Luke, the question is, if you didn't look back, did your wife ever look back?
I think she's okay with it now that we took the company public. There must have been some worry. I was at a cocktail party. I had just generated my first set of data. It was very promising. And one of my friends comes up to me and he says, what are you doing now? You're still up and going up to the company in Boston? I said, no, I'm at home now. I now trying to do this new idea I had. And I explained to him what it was. He said, yeah, I'll give you 100,000. So I said, really? He said, yeah. Another guy comes over and he gives me another good amount of money. And then it just grew. And from friends and neighbors, I raised 2 million, just like your classic guy out of the garage. But I was in my basement and I raised a couple of $1 million from friends and family. And my wife was like frantic. You can't take money from our friends and family. I said, they want to give me the money. They know that there's a big risk of it. Well, that it's not working, but it's an idea that I have to help people with cancer. And how could I not try? If I really had a good idea and I just stayed in a comfortable job, I was CEO, I was making good money. If I just wanted to stay in a job running businesses that were interesting, but nonetheless not my business, could I come to the end of my life and say, I think I had a good idea for cancer and I never did anything about it? That would have been a regret. And I always felt I could get a job.
What would it have taken for you to feel bad of the investment that your friends and family made? And here's why I ask. If it's like, you might say, well, maybe this wouldn't have worked out and they would have lost it. And I'd say, well, do you feel bad? It's like, no, we knew it might not work. Is there any part of that where you would have felt bad for doing that? Or everybody kind of just knew that you were going to do your best and they believed in you?
I felt terrible. I would have felt terrible. I would have felt terrible that I had the idea. I would have felt terrible. There was a lot of weight on my shoulders to take people's money and then not work as hard as I could and not deliver something. It would not have been good. I'm not the type of person that just says, oh, la-di-da, I took your money. I'm sorry I lost it. No. I was worried. I mean, I did not want to take my friend's money. First of all, they had to be a qualified investor. I had a guy that was a blind, and he made his money by working as a massage therapist for people would come to him. And he earned only with what he had from his hands, right? And he worked for $100 an hour, and he wanted to put in a substantial amount of money. And it was like, he cannot lose this money. I cannot take money from that guy. First of all, he wasn't qualified to be an investor. One from the rules of what you do is you take money from angels. They have to be qualified investors, and they have to have a certain income, a certain sophistication, and all this. You can't take money from just anybody. First of all, it's not ethical, and number two, it's not allowed for, really, if you want to do it right from a quality investor point of view. They have to be a qualified investor, certain income, certain salary, certain number of assets in order to be able to use the money on something. They were all qualified investors, and even though they were all knowingly giving me the money with the possibility that it would fail and that they would lose their money, it still may fail, right? Now, I've given them an out. We've gone public. We've taken the company public, but they haven't made a lot of money, but they're seeing results, and we've had really good results from patients that they've seen, and we've treated 200 patients. But I would have felt absolutely terrible if I'd have failed early and not had the chance to even get into people or to clinic. And you have to go through a massive amount of work to take a drug idea, make it under good manufacturing processes, get it into people, show the safety. You have to start out with low doses and work your way up. I mean, there is an enormous amount of work. And I knew what the workload was. And I knew what I had to do because I had so many years of experience developing drugs and developing this delivery technology for an oral delivery. I mean, the drug Rybelsus, which is an oral form of the GLP-1 protein Ozempic, I helped to create that technology. So I knew the physiology, I knew the pharmacology, the toxicology, the drug manufacturing, the patenting. I knew all of that business and technical aspects. I had done just about every job in pharmaceutical development. So I knew what I was getting myself into, and I knew what the road. I had regulatory interactions with FDA. I had regulatory interactions with the European Medicines Agency. I had patent experience. I had business experience, financing experience. I knew all the different kinds of financing options there were. So I had a wide breadth of not only technical but business, finance, patenting, law, legal stuff that I had good experience with. So I was going in with eyes wide open. It wasn't like I had to learn a lot. I knew I needed to apply it. IT, I had to learn all of that stuff too. And everything. I figured out my headsets tonight and got my camera to work after you told me what to do. So it's like I had the experience. I just had to put it all together to try to really make this thing happen. But I would have felt terrible if I'd have failed early. I really would have. So I carried that weight on my shoulders for the time I was doing this. I still do, actually.
At some point, like you said, it goes public. And so they might not get a huge payoff, but at least at that point, they can say, I didn't lose and I'm either still in or not, but at least you're kind of back to even there. That's got to make you feel good, like you say.
It's very satisfying to take a company from an idea in your head to a public company on NASDAQ. But it's not enough because what I'm doing this for is the patients.
Not good enough for you, but I mean, at least somebody who got the seed money in and stuff, at least they can bail and you're feeling okay that you didn't lose that for them.
Yeah, look, certainly I'm glad of that, obviously, if we'd have lost. But I feel like I carry the weight of this new technology, this totally different approach to treating cancer that seems to be very, very effective and fair with a favorable safety. I still carry the burden of until I get that product to the marketplace, I don't consider all the success I've had over the 12 years to be sufficient to make me feel good. I will not feel good until the FDA says this product will help people with good safety.
With the FDA, do you have to press them? Are you like on the phone, like, come on, guys, this and that? Or you send it and you just like hands off until they put their blessing on things?
First of all, let me tell you about the FDA. I have the utmost respect for the FDA. The FDA have a hard job. There's a lot of things that don't work and they're dangerous and they have to sort the good from the bad. And there's not that many really good. And they are science driven and they're very, very good at what they do. For the most part, I found them to be a pleasure to work with, to be very, very understanding. If you've got good science, if you have something that looks safe based on the number of side effects and the toxicities as they define it, and I understand exactly what they look for. And if you've got something that's going to keep people living longer and feeling good, they will buy into it if you can show them the data. You have to generate the data. And the data is all they look at. And so that's how I am. I am data driven. I am able to make sure that we are generating quality data, safety and efficacy data, presenting it in a way to show the FDA all the data in its totality in a way that tells the right message about how well or not this drug works.
Is that pretty much hands off with them? Are you just dealing with official documents and stuff? Or is it more like, hey, is Charlie there? I need to talk to him about this or that. Do you get to know the people at the FDA, or is it pretty much just forms and documents and that kind of stuff?
I get to know the people. You're not friendly. I'm not going to have them over to my house, but you get to know them. I've met with the head of the division of oncology in both the breast cancer and the sarcoma divisions. They are very interested in what we do. They are very demanding, and rightly so. Our manufacturing has to be as good as Merck's and Pfizer's. It has to be meet the GMP, good manufacturing process qualities of any drug. It has to be reproducible. You have to demonstrate reproducibility. You have to demonstrate safety, and you have to provide the data to them. And when we asked for some sort of fast track, which we've applied for and we received, or orphan drug status, which we applied for, you have to prove to them that you are meritorious of it based on the regulation. You read the regulations, you provide them the information they need, and they will give you what you deserve. For the most part, I find them to be very straightforward.
How is the speed of the FDA in general? I'm not talking your fast track, but is it kind of like, I was expecting to hear from this last week, and now it's been 4 weeks, and all they have to do is X, Y, Z, or does it move along in your mind?
So FDA has always met the timelines that they say they're going to meet. So, and you submit what's called an investigative new drug application, they have 30 days to review it. Okay. And they do it. They do it in the time they say they are. The regulations are this, they do it. Every time we've submitted something, they have met our needs within the time frame. I didn't get everything I wanted all the time, but within the time frame that they say, and you request a meeting, you're going to have 60 days for them to schedule the meeting. And it's done within the 60 days. Every regulation, they follow it. They meet their timelines. Now, they may say you might need to withdraw this. You didn't prepare it right. They work with you to make sure that when you have the meeting, it'll be successful. So you may have to adjust, and they give you coaching, and I'm telling you, they want new medicines as badly as patients, doctors, and pharmaceutical companies do. They do. And if you've got something, they will work with you. And they do it under the timelines that they set as the regs. They are required by a certain amount of time, by the regulations, to meet your needs within a defined time frame. And they do. And they do it. And they do it well.
How about them versus who you had to deal with for your public offering? I don't know, the FTC or whatever. How do you compare the FDA heads to the other heads you had to do on the business side of things?
Well, that's another story. Again, there's a lot more complexity to the SEC filing for an IPO in this world than the FDA. Straightforward. You got your data, you give your data. The SEC also has its rules and regulations, and they demand that for the sake of not patients in the case of the SEC, but for investors in the sake of SEC. So they are demanding on your financial statements. They want your auditors They want it to be PCAOB, which is the quality that you have to have in order for them. There's rules. Now, this is where my CFO and my accountants have to come in, because I know enough accounting to be dangerous and I know enough finance to be dangerous. But let me tell you something, that is hard. The hardest thing I ever took, the hardest class I ever took in my life was accounting during my MBA. It did not make any sense to me. Sorry. It's made up science. It's made up math. They want to do it to protect investors. I understand the need to protect investors, and that's their goal, is to protect investors. The FDA is to protect patients. The SEC is to protect investors, and rightly so, because there's a lot of things that are scammed. Frankly, there's a lot of fraud in the investment world. There's a lot of fraud. There can be fraud in the pharmaceutical industry as well. So look, SEC has their mission. I respect it. I think it is an appropriate way to go. They're tough, but you got to meet the standards. It's just like anything. They got regulations, they got standards. Would I change some of them? Could I do that? Probably. I'm not the accountant to say what should be changed or what's not to be changed. But they're tough, rightly so. They're protecting investors. I buy into it. The SEC, NASDAQ, they have their rules. This is the rules. You want to be on the markets, on their markets and their exchanges, you play by their rules. That's the way it is.
Besides all the rules, once you did that, was there anything that you said, it'd have been nice if I didn't have to do this part of it? Or does it feel fairly reasonable what they put you through?
Yeah, look, again, I didn't really understand that process as well as I understood the pharmaceutical drug development. I came into this I'm a drug developer, and I have business acumen and everything else. I didn't have a lot of experience working with SEC, even though I was part of a public company. I was the CEO, and I understand that. I knew all the financial reporting requirements and all that. Once public, I was CEO of 2 public biotech companies before, but I had never taken a company through the IPO process. So that was a learning experience for which I could write a book on right now. If anybody knows, there's this form that you have to file called an S1, and it's very, very complicated. It's got a lot of risk factors and everything. And when you're launching an IPO, you got to know all about all the risk factors. You got to comment on COVID's impact on your study, on Russia's war with Ukraine, on your. You have to have like a list of 1 million things in this, and it's very, very. It pulls together. I think our document was 540 pages that we ultimately needed with all the attachments and all the contracts and everything that had to be disclosed, and we pulled that together. And again, once you're through the SEC process, you got to get investors. And then there has to be a market, and the market isn't dependent on your company. It's dependent on what the market conditions are. And if investors are not investing, they're not investing. It could be the greatest thing in the world, and they're not there. And the key in that respect is to always be ready. If a window opens and there's a financing possible, you got to be able to be prepared with your S1 to jump through it. And so after we started in July of 21, we closed the IPO in June of 23. It took me 2 years, but we were always ready. We had 15 S1 filings, and every while they would go stale. Your financials would go stale, and you'd have to get new financials. The auditors have to do new financials. Your new quarter would come. You'd have to get, more disclosures and things. And we were always ready to get through. And when the window finally opened on June 29th, 2023, we got a financing done. It was upsized. It was at the top of the range in what we had projected. And you got to make projections, how much money you can make. And you don't know a priori. And we raised $22.5 million. We had demand for a significantly greater amount, but I leave that on the table at the time because we had made a filing to say we would raise between this range, and that's what we were stuck with. So we raised at the top of the range, at the top of the pricing allowed by the SEC, and we put in a good amount of money to allow the drug to keep going, and then we were a public company. And being a public company, I've done that before, so I know what I was getting myself into with being a public company of a CEO. I didn't know how to go through the birthing process of becoming a public company. And by the way, I feel really empathic for people who go through this process. It is like giving birth. It is probably not as painful as what women go through when they give birth. But
no, of course not. No, don't go there, Lou.
I'm not going there. But I mean, I didn't sleep. I mean, it was really, really tough for months and months and months. I was running out of money, and it was just a very painful experience because of the market conditions, not necessarily because of the data or because of the SEC. It was just the market conditions were terrible. There was inflation. There was a war in Ukraine in 22, if you'll remember. during the middle of our IPO, we had already priced the deal, and then there was a moratorium on IPOs because of manipulation by Chinese investors in the marketplace, and they put a pause on all of them. Didn't matter what your company was, it was all IPO. Microcap companies were stopped. I mean, it was just one uncontrollable factor after another that was happening at the time. But you persevere, and we got it done.
Lou, what is the worst part of you that made this more difficult? And if you said, if I was a little bit more like this, it would have been maybe smoother, if anything.
Well, look, if I'd had $1 billion, it would have been a lot easier.
It's got to be inside of your brain.
It can't be inside my wallet?
Not inside your wallet.
All right. Look, again, could it be my parents be rich or something like that? Or is that...
Nothing to do with money. Are you impatient? Do you have anger problems? Are you too agreeable? Are you too disagreeable? What's inside of you that you say, if I was a little bit more like this could have been smoother? Or are you perfect inside? Lou, get your wife on the line. Get her in here.
Look, we don't have time for all my deficiencies to be described, which my wife and my kids and my sister can accurately do.
Pick the biggest one.
But look, I'm pathologically honest, which is a problem. I'm a little too blunt when it comes to saying things, and I'm not really afraid of telling people what I really think. And that's sometimes I could be more diplomatic, and I'm learning that. It's not that I don't have patience. It's that, I really see the potential to help a lot of people for what we do. It's not about what we have. It's about how can people make money. It's not, my stock going public was because they could make money, because we priced at $5, we opened at $5.95, we went to $6.75. Everybody who was in that IPO was selling and they made a lot of money. And I find that it's not so much about the technologies or the drugs, it's about what's going to happen and how you're going to make money. And I find that's the real world. I get it. But I think we should be helping patients. And I look at my data objectively and I say, well, we can make this better and we can do this, but it's still really good. And I see what gets funded vis-a-vis what I have. And I see how much hundreds of millions of dollars are put into things that are not likely going to work because they've already failed and they're not much different than what's already failed. And why are they getting money and I'm not? And I could be a little bit better at trying to convince people of what we have with more diplomatic tendencies, which I generally don't have.
And as you say, you guys care about maybe the altruism of what you're going to do and all that. But once it hits the stock market, there might be some funds that maybe people have, but basically, is it going to make them money or not once it hits that level?
Look, the reality of the world is Wall Street is about making money. Anything else doesn't matter. And you have to accept that. I have to accept that. And that's what is frustrating is I know I'm going to make the money if I had the money to push the phase 3s and the phase 2s. And we're getting to the point where it's really hard to look at what we have with 200 patients. And if this does work, it's going to be worth a lot more than it currently is today. You just got to persevere and just understand what people want when they invest. They want honesty and they want to make money. Maybe not in that order. They want money and they want to make sure that they have a return for their investors, right? And their investors are looking to make sure that whoever they give the money to invest, that they're going to invest it and with a better chance of making money. So I understand it, and I just have to continue to work on the way I pitch to give people a sense of how this really is objectively, without hype, without anything other than this is the data, and hope that I can continue to get the capital that we need to continue to push forward.
How does Wall Street, how do they get their information about you guys to decide to invest or not? I'm sure there's all kinds of investment guides and so on. And how often do those kind of things tap you for information about how you're doing? I mean, weekly, do they see something, or is it just at your yearly reports? How does the world decide at that point if they're going to invest more in intensity therapeutics or not? How often do they get those insights from wherever?
Well, look, whenever we have news, we put out a press release. We have a PR firm, an IR firm that help promote it. It gets covered in the trades. We put out data at conferences. We put out our quarterly updates. We put out 8K filings. We're competing. We tweet out things. We use other social media and platforms. There's a website that we have. We write publications. So you just keep going and you build a credibility. We partnered with the National Cancer Institute, with whom we've published data. We partnered with big pharma companies. We partnered with government agencies in the US and Switzerland. We had a CRADA from the National Cancer Institute, a collaborative research and development agreement that funded some of our research. We have the FDA interactions, which when we get orphan drug or we get fast track, we put out news on that. So we continuously update. As a public company, we have a quarterly 10Q, an annual 10K. It has a lot of detail. I'm constantly talking to investors. I get my investor relations firm, puts me in front of investors. We give them updates. I'm constantly promoting and talking about what we have. And as I said, we got the IPO done. And I think it's just that right now the markets are fairly unstable with the election happening and a new administration, some very good things that could be coming out of that'll help the biotech and help business. So it's all a confluence of events in the world and in the markets and in the people. And the bottom line is when there's certainty, it's easier. When there's less certainty, it's harder to raise money. And we're in a transition period and it's always more uncertain times it's harder to do things like that. But eventually times change and all of a sudden the markets open up again and things get really good. And then if we're out there and people recognize what we have, and I've done my job of building a foundation of relationships with the investors and showing that we can execute, hopefully they'll recognize what we've done. And I mean, I've been around almost 13 years and we execute. And if you continue to do that and do what you say you're going to do, then people respect that and they look at it as what you got to do.
So Lou, I'm thinking of competition. And once you hit the stock market, your competition is not really another cancer drug. It's really, does somebody want to invest in something else besides this, beach balls or whatever? You're competing for the brain of somebody who thinks you're going to make them more money than someone else, basically, because like we talked about, they don't care what you do.
You're absolutely right. Look, there's fads that go on in investment. I mean, right now you're in an AI fad. I mean, anybody with .ai in their name is raising a lot of money. I remember in 1999, it was the .com. Red herrings, these business plans come through where the more they sold, the more they lost. But they could raise $100 million and they were doing that. So you're absolutely right, Mike, that the competition for investment dollars now is flowing to tech and AI in particular. The valuations of some of these things are just enormous. And we're competing with that. And biotech and cancer in particular is a challenging market time right now in terms of the progress that's being made. So you have that factor as well. And that's why I have to keep saying, look, here's why we're different. Here's what our data is. We're different. Hello, we're different. We've got data in this many people. We've shown this kind of survival. We've shown this kind of safety. It's very, very good vis-a-vis all the other drugs out there. We're in the late stages of development. We're a couple of years away from having our potential data readouts. You just got to keep repeating where your progress is being made and what you're doing to compete with the things that capture a lot more news. AI is it, right? But I remember where the internet was it, .com was it. And then in 2020, the COVID vaccines hit and biotech was it for a while there and COVID vaccines and COVID treatments and all this stuff. So the market changes, but if you keep persevering and you've got something that really works, eventually people will find it. And I just got to keep going, doing that.
Lou, from not a medical perspective, but from a stock perspective, you said that cancer medicine might not be, real exciting right now or whatever. Those are putting words in your mouth. But what are investors seeing about the cancer market that maybe it's not as popular as we'd like it or it could be? What are investors seeing in general about the cancer market that maybe they don't like as much?
Well, I turned that around. I said, well, where's been the excitement in the last few years in cancer? In the last couple of years, you've seen some interesting things in some new technologies that are very early on, but some of the big immunotherapy products were not much better than the current immunotherapy products. And there's patents coming off. Look, if you do the same thing over and over again and expect for a different result each time, that's the level of insanity. And so we've had a lot of things that have tried and tried and tried. They're a little bit variation on the same theme. And, they haven't worked that well. There's antibody drug conjugates look very promising, but they're very challenging to make. And their benefit is really hard to achieve. You have to do large scale studies. And for smaller companies, it's very, very challenging to do these kinds of things. So there are jewels out there, but if people are looking in a different store and they're not buying jewelry, let's say drugs and jewelry, they're buying the latest app or they're buying a new electric vehicle, then they're not in your store. You've got to attract them back to your store with something that's really glistening. That's what we have to do. You got to get them back with some glistening data.
And I agree completely about AI. You get AI in your name. Have you seen any drug companies or similar latch on to that AI, the pizzazz, and you see something happening with them and you're like, they're not doing anything. They just put that in their name and got more attention. Do you see that happening in the drug market too?
I get 10 emails a day pitching me vendors that are pitching me some sort of AI service that's related to drug development every day. I mean, it's all over the place. And you see deals where companies are signing up with AI companies all the time. I read 3 or 4 books on AI. I've gone to NVIDIA's website and I learned about their parallel processing chips. NVIDIA is the big AI chip maker. They got $3 trillion valuation. It all started in gaming. They had a parallel processing chip design. Everybody else wasn't doing that. They kind of captured the market because that's what's applicable for AI, ChatGPT, OpenAI, all of these Grok, all of these Copilot, all of these AI services that are coming out. I've learned about them because I said I need to understand what this is. Can it really help me or not? And so I've read extensively about it, and I've talked to people who are chip designers, and they explain to me things. So I kind of have a very good feel for it and what its limitations are and what the risks are and what it can and cannot do. These language models that they create are very, very useful in a lot of applications. And I use it when I write now. I'll use Grammarly, which I think, because I'm an engineer. Do I write well? I can put a couple of sentences together, but I can't write like Hemingway. I use some of these AI tools to help communicate. And it's been very helpful. I've been more effective when I've applied some of these AI tools to correcting and clarifying some of the messaging that I want to say. It's been helpful that way. Will it help make drugs? Maybe. I don't know. It couldn't have done what I did because I think HI is better. HI, human intelligence, is still paramount in terms of creativity in my mind. Generative AI is very good at giving you more ideas than maybe you would have thought at, but to really hone in on what's a practical idea as opposed to just a generative AI idea is still going to require human thought and human consideration that's not capable to be done by the AI technologies that are out there.
Lou, where is cancer down the road?
Well, look, I believe we have a locally delivered therapy. It's not systemic, but it treats systemic disease. The safety is very favorable compared to what we have. One of the things about cancer that people don't recognize is that people are afraid of the treatment as much as they are of the disease because it's so toxic. With what we have, you can inject the tumors, the drug stays in the tumors die, they convert into something that's recognized by the immune system. And I'm thinking, and I'm at Kitty Hawk right now. I believe that what we have is potentially, and not yet there, obviously we have to show it, but if we can show that a local therapy can treat metastatic disease with the kind of safety that we're showing, that the doctors and the people who will come after me and after this first product will just blow away the rest of what's going to happen in cancer. I believe that we are on a cusp. if my technology can work, of creating another Wright brothers moment, but for cancer. Now, that's a very bold statement. It's what I firmly believe. I've got to prove it. People will dismiss it. It's hype. It's everything that I say is not believable, and they're absolutely right not to believe it until we do it. And hopefully we'll get the capital to do it. But ultimately, where can cancer be? It's going to be a lot different than it is today. I hope it's going to be safer. I think it's going to be a chronic disease where, okay, you get your cancer, you get it treated, it goes away, you come back, maybe you get another treatment with a different way. That's kind of what we do with targeted therapy now. You keep mutating. But I hope someday that we will really extend, since Nixon signed the 1973 War on Cancer Act, the average age of people getting cancer is 69. The average age of death is about 3 years. It hasn't really moved. Every year, there's about another 5,000 to 10,000 deaths in the United States from cancer. Over 615,000 people die every year. The same number has been around for a long time. It's just not changing in terms of the number of people and the percentages of people. It's going down in terms of the percentage, but we're still losing way too many people. 1,800 people a day died from cancer. I think what we want to do is change the course. With the studies we've had people not die of the cancer, even though they had late stage metastatic disease. They died of a heart attack, or they died of stroke, or they died of something else. The goal for us is to push cancer way down in the death realm, from number 2 behind heart disease to below some other death rate. We want cancer to be a chronic disease that maybe it'll kill you when you're 80 and not the average age of 70 or 72, whatever it is. That's where I think we can be, and we can take the fear out of it. We can take the fear out of the treatment. You don't need to be on it for the rest of your life. We can maybe get a treatment where the cancer gets killed, the immune system gets activated, you're off drug after a year, and you're good for a long time. And then if something happens and it comes back, there's another product to come and get rid of that. And you monitor it better. Monitoring is always critical. We're getting way better at monitoring. More mammograms, more cancer identification technologies will come into play. You get it early, you can cure it. So that's what we need to do. We need to focus on better treatments that are safer treatments, better detection. And I think that's where the industry is moving. And I think we're going to be there.
Lou, where do you want your company to go? Let's say that you get clearance on this or whatever that's called, and all of a sudden then you're doing this. Would you like to be producing thousands and thousands of drugs coming out of your building and putting them in the brown boxes and putting shipping tape on them? Or when that point comes, will you sell that and then be more of an inventor again?
The number one thing when I started this company is whenever I make a decision, it's what's in the best interest of patients. Okay? So when people say, what's your business strategy? I say, my business strategy, if we have an effective drug, I want it into as many countries and as many patients as possible around the world. So if somebody says, we're a big player in this and we'll help you, then that's great. You take it over, you commit to giving this drug to as many people as possible, then I'm all in. You can buy me out, whatever is best for patient. If there's nobody willing to do that, I will do the best I can to try to deliver these new products to as many people as I can with whatever resources I'm allowed to have. But everything that I think of when I try to make a decision about what should we do, whether it's to finance at a very unfriendly financing set of conditions, but if I need to, I do it because that's going to be in the best interest of patients. If we don't stay in business, then that's not in the best interest of patients. So whatever we have to do to survive, to get the drug into patients and to be as dispersed throughout the world as possible, that's what's going to drive my decision.
Lou, people are listening to this and they've got a couple minutes to spare once they park their car. Where are they going to learn more about your company?
Well, our ticker symbol is INTS, Intensity Therapeutics. Our website is www.intensitytherapeutics.com. You can Google me, Lou Bender, Intensity Therapeutics. You can do a million ways to find us.
Golly, Lou, Thanks for joining us. It's fun talking to you with your enthusiasm for this, because I know that investors are looking for the profit, not necessarily the reason, but it's cool to talk to you. You've got the reason behind it and you've got the business chops. So really cool talking to you. Lou, I know you're busy. Thanks for your time. I appreciate it. The listeners appreciate it. It's going to be fun following you guys. So congratulations and look forward to keeping in touch.
Thank you, Mike. Any chance I get to talk about what we do and to talk about the science of not just our science or whatever we talked about, or the Wright brothers, whatever, I love to do it. I appreciate the microphone.
Thanks, Lou. Talk to you soon. You've been listening to the Business of Pharmacy podcast with me, your host, Mike Kelzer. Please subscribe for all future episodes.